Did you know that on average there are 8 firearms per every adult living in the state of Texas?
That's a lot.
That
That's
is
a much bigger number. I don't think I ever thought about it.
Hmm.
Wow. So that makes me think, just the other day we were talking with an acquaintance of ours who moved here from California. She's originally from California, like within the last year, and we were all planning a get together with going over to a couple's house, another friends of ours, mutual friends, and she reached out to us because she was concerned that they own guns.
Yeah.
Specifically, she knew that they owned a semi-automatic rifle, and she was like nervous about going to the party, and I was like maybe not going to go. And so we assured her that like the overwhelming majority of gun owners in Texas, that they are responsible. And sure enough, they have got a gun safe. They're going to have everything locked up. And we realized that that was something we totally take for granted.
And that people moving here, that might be a concern for people moving here. If you don't live here, if you don't know, Texas is what's called a constitutional carry state. That means the only gun permit that you need as a citizen or as a resident here in the state of Texas is the U.S. Constitution and its Second Amendment.
Yep. So obviously, this video is going to be about the 7 cold, hard facts that you need to know before moving to Houston. And we're getting after it right now. What's up, everybody? This is Drew Mims
And I'm Carrie Fletcher.
And we're with the Living in Houston team right here in Houston, Texas. This channel is all about living in Houston, the good, the bad, the ugly. If this is your first time to our channel and you want to know everything about living in Houston, then make sure you tap that subscribe button and click that little bell so that you're notified every single time we put out a new video. We get so many people calling us and we absolutely love it. If you're thinking about making a move, be sure to give us a call, shoot us a text, or send us an email. However you'd like to get a hold of us, we've got your back when moving to Houston. Okay, so we've already talked about our number 1, which was gun laws. Number 2
is heavy traffic. So heavy traffic, I guess one of the first points is the extended rush hour. So you've got people who work shifts, everything from 7 to 4, 8 to 5, 9 to 6,
10 to 7.
10 to 7. People live on the west side, but then work over in Channelview or down in the port. And so, and they have these long drives and these long commutes. So it's not like rush hour is consolidated in these very narrow windows. It's
Plus,
spread out.
I think people forget that Houston's a port town. So you have a lot of trucks coming in and out that I-10 corridor.
Yep.
So just bringing things in from the port. So
right.
Rush hour can be crazy and it can be very long. We have clients that oftentimes, leave at 6 o'clock in the morning just to beat traffic so that they're not sitting in traffic half their day.
Right. I was going to say one of the next things is not only the extended rush hours, but we have aggressive or dangerous drivers. While there's the litany of very beautiful, very wonderful, well-maintained cars out on the Houston highways, there are a number of
beater cars
or work trucks that look like they came straight out of the Beverly Hillbillies.
Well, you've got a lot of uninsured drivers.
Yep.
So that's something to be aware of. You've got people who just park their butts, going 50 miles an hour in the passing lane, or what I refer to as the fast lane, which drives me absolutely crazy.
The way I like to spin that story is that Houston is full of people from all over the world. It's a very culturally diverse city, and sometimes people don't quite get acclimated to the driving rules or the driving courtesies around here, and they drive very slow in the passing lane, which can be very dangerous.
Driving slow in general on our freeways can be, so a lot of people call it expressways. Here we call them freeways because you don't have to pay to drive on them. We do have toll roads, but in general we have freeways, and they can be 5 lanes, so they're huge. So if you're not used to driving on big freeways, it can be a little intimidating at first. Going with the flow of traffic, and we're not traffic experts, although I'd like to think that I am Dr. Drew, traffic guru, but
Right.
So one of the things that goes along with these uninsured drivers who may or may not be driving a beater car is they'll have these fake dealer tags, like fake dealer license plates that, the temporary ones that you get that are supposed to last like 30 days. They'll either be expired or, they'll be 6 months out, and so if you get into a wreck with those people, you're probably going to be out of luck.
Right.
They're probably not going to be insured. You're probably not going to be able to track them down, etc.
Yep.
And Houston has pretty strict rules that if you get into an accident, they want you to, if the car's drivable or cars plural are drivable that are involved in the accident, they want you to immediately pull over to the shoulder so that traffic can keep moving, because when there's a wreck in Houston and it's just stuck in the middle of the road, like it can shut things down and really back it up for hours.
Yep. So last thing about the heavy traffic and the drivers is not only is the danger of slow driver in the passing lane, but you get some very aggressive drivers that may or may not use turn signals and or speed excessively past the flow of traffic.
Houston drivers are not very kind in general. There are kind drivers, but
no.
When I first moved here, my very good friend who has been my friend my whole life just reminded me when I moved back, don't put your blinker on until you're actually changing lanes. Because if you put your blinker on, people just won't let you over. And that's the number one thing that clients tell me is like, oh my gosh, people are such jerks here driving and nobody will let me over. And I'm like, oh yeah, you can't put your blinker on until you're actually,
turning,
making that turn.
It's a kind, wonderful city.
It
normally,
is. Again, this is a video about the cold, hard facts. We're telling you the truth.
For when people are driving, there's something about getting out there that turns Houston around. So not only do you have heavy traffic, long time driving, you also have to remember that Houston is massive.
Which is number 3.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. I forgot to say. Number 3, Houston is massive. So we have a good group of friends that we like to get together, families that we like to get together pretty regularly, but one of the family lives in the Woodlands. Another family lives in Cypress. Another family lives in Siena. And another family lives in Fulshire.
So it's hard.
And then we live in the Heights. So you're talking about during that rush hour, heavy traffic time, it's 50 some odd minutes, an hour to each person's house, and there's no real great central location, so it's hard for us to get together as families.
You can drive 2 hours and still be in the Houston metro area.
Yeah.
So that's just something to be aware of.
Yeah. So that plays not only into whenever you want to get together as family, but that's really something that you should take into consideration where are we going to live that's going to be convenient for work and convenient for the lifestyle that we want to have as a family.
Well, and I think that's why so many people wind up making friends, in the communities that they live in.
Right.
Because it's just easier. All right, so that brings us to number 4, which is heat and humidity, my favorite subject. If you're moving here from like the glorious state of California or Illinois or, somewhere that's dry, you've got a dry climate, or Arizona, which is where Carrie moved from. Oh my gosh, when you get off the plane, it's going to feel like a sauna. Like you literally just, the humidity will hit you in the face and it might even knock you over. So we warned you.
So I was telling the story of when I first started getting into real estate, helping Drew with open houses. I would try to wear this nice dark jacket and pants and going around putting out the yard signs and the signs. And by the time I got in there to the open house and the first people are coming, I'm just like dripping in sweat and very, very uncomfortable. And it would take me an hour or so just to kind of cool off.
Yeah, you have to choose your clothes wisely. Yeah. It's hard to dress up in the summer, I think, especially as a man. I mean, for women, we can wear dresses, which I think is much cooler.
And I wear shorts pretty much year round. Every occasion that I can get away with it, I do.
For us ladies and some men, the humidity can be a thing with our hair. You definitely have to get new products and figure out how to deal with your hair in the humidity so that you don't look like you stuck your finger into the light socket.
I had to get new product for me, so.
Now the bonus
Yeah.
of the silver lining of the humidity though is that it can keep your skin looking young and
Mm-hmm.
plumped out. I know whenever we go like to Montana or Colorado, I always just feel like everything just puckers up. So
Dries up.
there is a positive side to it, and our winters are very mild. Like right now, this week it's going to be like the high is 80, but a lot of days are going to be in the 70s, so it's quite nice.
Just as a reference,
It's
as
December,
of filming, it's mid-December right now, right?
which is it's going to cool down next week, and you never know. I mean, we've already had some really cold weather, and then it
Mm-hmm.
just got hot again.
So that sort of transitions. The heat and humidity sort of lays the base for point number 5, which is extreme weather. So first and foremost, Houston is known for hurricanes. We haven't had one in a while, for a few years, but we're more prone than most other cities to having the occasional hurricane.
Because we're so close to the coast.
But even when you don't have hurricanes, because of all the heat and because of all the humidity, we can have major rain events and major tropical storm events. That was one of the things about Harvey, is it wasn't such a devastating hurricane as much of a slow moving, heavy rain system, which causes
it just
flooding.
Sat over Houston and just dumped rain, just didn't stop. So like in other cities, FEMA has mapped out the various flood zones, and those are ever changing, and that's important to know because each time we have one of these flood events, a different area may flood.
Right. So for those of you who aren't familiar with flood zones, there's X, which is typically a minimal flood hazard.
It's the good zone to live
in. It's a good zone to live in. The 500-year floodplain, which is, I think, about 0.5% any given year that you run the risk of flooding, and then a 100-year floodplain, or a 1% chance of flooding in any given year, and then just the natural flood zones, or the floodways that run throughout. Now, because the city of Houston and the state of Texas has invested so much in flood prevention, and the floods can be so damaging, they've enacted new laws and new regulations within the city of Houston that if you go in and you build new, or if you go in and have a building permit, they'll make sure that you have your house at an elevation above the 500-year floodplain by about 2 feet, I think. And so knowing and understanding those rules, those regulations, and how important it is to know and understand the different flooding patterns that happen here in Houston, that's why it's so important to work with us, people who know and understand these hazards, and know and understand the rules and regulations regarding them.
Because it doesn't have to be scary, right? You just need to be informed and make informed decisions.
Exactly.
So
the one advice that we give all our clients moving here:
get flood insurance.
No matter where you live.
No matter what zone you're in, because we just have these freak storms and you just never know. And it's very affordable if you're not in a flood zone, and we just recommend that everybody does it. So another type of extreme weather event that we get here, which is so rare, but it happens now, is it freezes.
Yep.
And snow. And it's like it'll just be a whole freak situation that happens.
So it's not so much that it's extreme in comparison to the freezes that you get anywhere else. What makes it extreme in the city of Houston is that we're really not designed and prepared to handle heavy freezes or snows. So it really kind of just shuts the whole city down.
Our freeways are elevated, a lot of them, a lot of overpasses, and so they tend to freeze. I mean, it's actually very nice and quiet when it freezes because you could hear a pin drop. There's nobody out on the roads.
Yeah.
And people just tend to stay home because we don't have the salt trucks out, preparing the roads and all that kind of thing that you would get in the Northeast. So, it's just an excuse to kind of stay home and drink some hot chocolate. And
well, in the water systems and the power systems, as well as the road systems, are not designed to handle it. So you can have some potential disruptions to your water and power during those events.
I think everybody knows about the major disruption that we had a couple of years ago where we literally did not have power for 48 hours, and it was 35 degrees in our house. And which for us, we're just not used to that. It was very cold.
Got the opportunity to cuddle
Yeah,
and
and
play games.
we didn't have water for 5 days,
No.
and so luckily we're used to hurricanes, and I don't know what made us do it, but we filled our bathtubs with water, and it really came in handy because that was the only way that we were able to actually flush our toilets.
Yeah. So the good news about these extreme weather events or these things is the city of Houston really rallies. They come together. You don't have the issues in Houston with the price gouging, the looting.
Yeah, we don't see all that.
The major disruptions. If anything, if if the driving it brings out the Houston's worst, these extreme weather events brings out Houston's best, where you really see the town rally and support and help each other.
Everybody volunteers. It's one of the most heartwarming, amazing things to witness.
Mattress Mac, you remember? He just opened a big name furniture store here in Houston. Opened up his doors and then just brought in all these people who were displaced from the last flood and just brought them in. Took care of them.
The people in Houston are like nowhere else.
Yeah.
People, we joke, like I'm working with a couple right now. He's lived in Houston a couple of times, and his wife is moving here from another country, and she's kind of like, and we both keep telling her, we're like, people come to Houston kicking and screaming. Like they don't want to move here, and then they don't want to leave. And when they do like get transferred out, they wind up coming back because they love it. They make such good friends, and we love our city, and we think you'll fall in love with it too. But we want you to know the good, the bad, and the ugly so that you can make an informed decision.
Number 6,
lack of public transportation. So if you live in a city like New York, City, well, one of the 5 boroughs, or you're in California, has a good train system, or Chicago, and you're used to having like really good public transportation, we don't have that here. We have buses. It's not like you can't take the bus, but Houston's so big. I mean, you'd have a lot of connections to make, and it could be a rough day. I'm sure it's a little more sophisticated now that there's apps, but you got to have time on your hands.
Right. We'll go back to points number 1 and 2 about the heavy traffic and Houston being so massive. It's almost impossible to build out an efficient, timely bus.
It's not impossible. It's not impossible, but the powers that be have chosen not to.
Yeah.
The city actually gets more federal tax dollars for road repair than they do to put in public transport. And so, because the freeways are actually designed where the HOV lanes are, that they could hold a train system.
Really?
But yes, they opt not to. That's my little 2 cents on that. We do have a bus system, and we do have a very small light rail system, a train, that was essentially put in for the Super Bowl, the first year that we hosted the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And it went from downtown to the medical center, which is a decent little ride. It takes you to NRG Stadium, which also is host to the Texans games, lots of events. You've got the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, which is a huge thing in Houston. It's a 3-week event that takes place every year. It kicks off the last weekend of February with the barbecue cook-off, and then there's like a whole 3 weeks of the rodeo and all the livestock show and entertainment. It's a really fun event to check out. But the light rail also, like they've extended it now to where it goes like to Edo, east of downtown, and near Northside. And I think they're going to be expanding it a little bit more, but it's never going to be, unless you want to live in one of those specific areas, it's just not going to be an option for you.
Right.
Okay, so number 7, no zoning.
So what do most people think of whenever you hear the city of Houston has no zoning?
I had somebody once ask me if that meant like, what, am I going to have a skyscraper, next to my house? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah.
So Houston does have land use regulations. Despite their reputation as a city without zoning,
right.
Houston does regulate a myriad of land use issues such as like density, you've got buffering, lot size, historic preservation. We have lots of historic communities where they're very strict rules about what you can and cannot do. And that's all handled through the Planning and Development Department. Most of the city's policies and regulations that act like zoning are applied through subdivision ordinances.
Right.
So you've got like deed restrictions on a property, which will create rules that are similar to zoning. And deed restrictions are established at the time the property is created, or if there are any, changes, like alterations made to the property. And that helps prevent issues like a corner store within a residential neighborhood, right, from going up. So to fill in any of those gaps, that's where the homeowners associations will go in and, because the city has the lack of zoning, you've got civic and private organizations like these super neighborhoods going in and the HOAs, and they'll implement their own regulations. So we have big master plan communities here out in the suburbs. Like the Woodlands is a perfect example, and they have all kinds of rules down to like whether or not you can cut a tree down. You have to get permission to actually do that. Hence the name, the Woodlands. They want it to feel like a woodland. Yep. Also, there are unincorporated towns, which it's important to note that we've got them, right? They're all around the Houston metro area. In fact, my parents live in Harris County unincorporated, so it's kind of weird. They can't vote for mayor. They have to pay taxes, which is crazy to me, but they can't vote for mayor because they're in an unincorporated section of Harris County.
Right.
So while these unincorporated towns have their own land use codes, if they lie within the Houston annexation